psalm, we move ahead now to Psalm 92 of Solomon. O God, endow the king with your judgments, the king's son with your righteousness, that he may judge your people rightly, your lowly ones justly. Let the mountains produce well-being for the people, the hills the reward of justice. Let him champion the lowly among the people, deliver the needy folk, and crush those who wrong them. Let them fear you as long as the sun shines, while the moon lasts generations on end. Let him be like rain that falls on a mown field, like a downpour of rain on the ground, that the righteous may flourish in his time, and well-being abound till the moon is no more. Let him rule from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. Let desert dwellers kneel before him, and his enemies lick the dust. Let kings of Tarshish and the islands pay tribute. Kings of Sheba and Seba offer gifts. Let all kings bow to him, and all nations serve him. For he saves the needy who cry out, the lowly who have no helper. He cares about the poor and the needy. He brings the needy deliverance. He redeems them from fraud and lawlessness. The shedding of their blood weighs heavily upon him. So let him live and receive gold of Sheba. Let prayers for him be said always, blessings on him invoked at all times. Let abundant grain be in the land, to the tops of the mountains. Let his crops thrive like the forests of Lebanon. And let men sprout up in towns like country grass. May his name be eternal. While the sun lasts, may his name endure. Let men invoke his blessedness upon themselves. Let all nations count him happy. Blessed is the Lord God, God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Blessed is his glorious name forever. His glory fills the whole world. Amen and amen. End of the prayers of David, son of Jesse. Thus concludes what is known as Book 2, or the second section of the Book of Psalms. And according to tradition, the Psalms, at least up until now, were written by King David himself, although biblical scholars have clearly shown that this is not the case. So to use a fancy word found in biblical scholarship, the word pseudepigrapha, which I'm not going to ask you to recite 10 times fast. I can barely even recite it once. But that word essentially refers to a book written by someone who attributes it to the authorship of someone else. So some examples of pseudepigrapha, other than the Psalms attributed to David, are Ecclesiastes, attributed to King Solomon, but actually written by someone else. Proverbs, also to Solomon. Song of Songs to Solomon, but not written by Solomon. So those are a few examples. And that is why this psalm ends with the words, end of the prayers of David, son of Jesse. And the verse immediately before that, Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael, blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Blessed is glorious name forever. His glory fills the whole world. Amen and amen. That verse actually is the verse that concludes the morning section of psalm readings called Psuke de Zimra that we read every morning during the morning prayer service. The morning service begins with a section after the earliest prayers and blessings called Birkot HaShachar, the dawn blessings, leads immediately into Psuke de Zimra, or Psalms of Praise, which are essentially a prayer warm-up before we begin the Shacharit, or the formal morning service. That prayer warm-up consists of a series of psalms and readings, selections from psalms, in order to get people into the mood of prayer and to get people essentially in the kind of groove so that they can be ready for the heart and soul of the fixed or obligatory prayers that come after it. And so those Psalms conclude with the verse I just quoted. And that verse is used here in Psalm 72 in order to conclude the section of Psalms attributed to King David. It's also interesting that this psalm is dedicated to Solomon, the son of David, who was known for his great wisdom. And the psalmist emphasizes that the greatest way to measure the value of the king, in this case King Solomon, is the degree to which he champions the lowly among the people, delivers the needy folk. And the word Evyon is repeated several times in this psalm. Evyon means needy. For he saves the needy who cry out, the lowly who have no helper. He cares about the poor and the needy. He brings the needy deliverance, and so on and so forth. So it's very clear what the psalmist really cares about here, and what he believes that King Solomon ought to really care about, which is the fate and well-being and welfare of those who are in need. Even though the psalmist prays for the king's great wealth and power, which King Solomon did indeed achieve, what the psalmist really cares about from an ethical point of view is the degree to which the king shows concern and demonstrates a policy of care for all those who are needy and disenfranchised. Now, in today's world, this is a value, I believe, that transcends politics, or at least ought to, and ought to transcend political parties and affiliations. You don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or a socialist to care about the welfare of the needy and the disenfranchised. This is a basic human value taught by our biblical tradition, and it is something that I believe the leaders of our country ought to ascribe to. It's not an issue of party affiliation, whether somebody shows and demonstrates care and concern for the needy. And it is my prayer, especially during this time of the pandemic, that everyone who has been so adversely affected and harmed and damaged by COVID-19 and its effects, so many who have been harmed by the tanking economy, the challenges of different industries that have been hurt by this latest downturn, that their needs will never be neglected, that their fate will be cared for, that our government, our leaders will be ever mindful that those who need the most will never be forgotten. King Solomon, with all of his great wealth and all of his great wisdom, cared for those who were in need. The righteous king righteously enacted concern and policies that showed that he really, in his innermost heart, would never ever forget those who were needy. It's easy when you are sitting in the laps of luxury to forget about those who have so little. We are reminded by the psalmist never to forget them. All of us are called upon through righteous deeds, through acts of social concern and advocating for social justice, to always be mindful of those who have less, of the disenfranchised in our society. Thank you.